What's going on, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to talk about a stock that I just recently purchased and why I think you might want to consider it as part of your long-term holdings too. So the stock is American Tower, and they're a REIT, a real estate investment trust. They are a wireless cell tower infrastructure company. That's probably the simplest way to put it. And they're one of my favorite 5G stocks. So I averaged in last week at around $211. I think it's currently trading at $215, and they do offer a 2.3% dividend. In this video, I'm going to be referring to the word earnings a lot, and every time I do, what I really mean is AFFO, or adjusted funds from operations. It's kind of a widely used metric in the REIT space, and I'll show you the reconciliation that American Tower uses to reconcile net income to AFFO. So next year's earnings is estimated to be at $9.20, which means they're trading at about a 23 times forward earnings. I wouldn't consider this stock to be at a bargain, but I probably would categorize it as growth at a reasonable price. During September of last year, I made a video on Crown Castle, and they're a cell tower business too. They just have very differing business strategies compared to American Tower. In that video, I go into the basics of the industry. I talk a little bit about the wireless spectrum. So I'll link that video up above and down below in the comment section. It was in that analysis that I realized I didn't really like Crown Castle that much. And mainly because of their heavy investment in the fiber optics infrastructure. I just wasn't sure they were going to build enough small cells to justify all of that investment. What it did make me realize, though, was how much I liked American Tower. And I think the problem at the time was it was trading at $254 and about 27 times forward earnings. And I just don't like overpaying for stocks. So why am I getting into the stock now? Mainly because of valuation has become more reasonable. And also, I think some of the growth catalysts are starting to materialize. American Tower has towers all over the world. They have 186,000 towers globally. And even though the towers in US and Canada are only about a quarter of their total towers, they're responsible for 60% of the revenue. And their largest tenants are the three major US carriers. Now, the US and Canadian market is a bit more mature, so it grows a little bit slower than their international portfolio. But I actually think the growth rate in the US is going to be picking up pretty soon. And the reason why I think that is because of the recent spectrum auctions. So think of spectrum in three different categories. You have low band, which travels really far, but the throughput is pretty low. And then you have high band, which has really great throughput, but it's got really short range. And then there's mid-band. And mid-band is this great balance between range and throughput. The last major spectrum auction, which was auction 97, was in the year 2014 for the AWS-3 spectrum. So the FCC had auctioned off the 1.7 gigahertz band and also the 2.1 gigahertz spectrum band. And the carriers paid a whopping $45 billion. And it wasn't until December of 2020, 6 years later, did we finally have another major auction. And this was auctioning off the C-band. C-band was auctioned off in three blocks A, B, and C. So A will be available starting December 2021, and B and C would be available starting in December 2023. And the bidding results were published at the end of February, and the carriers paid $81 billion. And you would guess it, the top bidders are Verizon at $45 billion, AT&T at $23 billion, and T-Mobile at $9 billion. And later this year, auction 108, the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum is going to come out for auction also. I believe that's going to take place sometime in December of 2021. So the carriers just got all of this valuable spectrum, this perfect sweet spectrum that balances throughput and range, which is what 5G has been promising all of this time. And I think the next phase is to start installing equipment that would utilize all of this spectrum. So AT&T has come out and said that they're going to spend $6 to $8 billion in the next 3 years on the C-band deployment. And Verizon has come out and said they're going to spend about $10 billion in the next 3 years for C-band deployment. And so far, I haven't heard what T-Mobile has come out and said. And I know we've been talking about 5G for years now, but we are barely at the beginning. This cycle has another 10 years to go. And beyond the United States, their international portfolio is no joke either. In Africa, they're still deploying 3G and 4G. 5G is almost non-existent there. So the growth story is going to go on for years in that country. In South America, 5G is starting to roll out, and Brazil is having their spectrum auction rules solidified this year. So you can expect to see auctions going out, and then carriers deploying more devices on cell towers. The European market is actually pretty interesting. They're undergoing this transformation right now. So, unlike the US, cell towers were owned by the wireless carriers themselves. And it wasn't until the second half of 2020 and this year when the cell towers are now being sold off or spun off through IPOs. And so, this is allowing American Tower to purchase about 30,000 towers from Telefonica, and of which 27,000 of those towers are in Germany and Spain. So this is going to increase American Tower's presence in Europe pretty dramatically. And India is the second largest telecommunication market in the world, the first being China. India has 1.2 billion wireless subscribers, and they're undergoing this huge dramatic change also. And starting in 2018, their wireless carrier market was very fragmented, and they've started consolidating, and now they've consolidated down to 3 major companies. So you'll notice that the growth in India is a little subpar. And that's because consolidation creates a lot of churn, meaning when carriers merge, they realize that they have equipment that kind of overlap the same spectrum, and so some of the equipment gets decommissioned, or they get turned off, or the leases get non-renewed. So starting in 2018, there was a lot of very high churn rate in that portfolio, probably around 11%, and it's slowly come down to about 8%, and I think since consolidation for wireless carriers is probably not going to happen anymore because they only have 3, the churn rate is going to start coming down a lot, and that's going to allow growth rates to start picking back up in that market. And the reason for all of this infrastructure spending is because global data consumption is just not slowing down. In fact, it's picking up and growing year over year. And I think American Tower is going to be a great beneficiary of all of this. So for all the reasons that I laid out, I think they're at an inflection point where they're about to have many years of profitability. And if you look at the chart, I can't tell where the bottom is. What I can tell you is that for a great company that's planning to increase their earnings at 8 to 10% a year, you're actually picking up a good stock at a pretty reasonable valuation. So I hope you were able to get something valuable from this video. And I want to thank you, and I will see you in the next video.